I'm Terry Lohman. I'm co-chair of UU's for a Just Economic Community, which we call UUJEC, but that's a bad habit that UUs have, making acronyms on everything. In fact, I was so offended when I was on the UU funding program. I got up and said, when you're writing your grant proposal, do not use acronyms. It drives me crazy. And then we were supposed to talk about a grant that we liked. And I said, well, I really like the one for UUSC. And the room just exploded in laughter. And I'm like, what? I thought everybody knew UUSC. But at any rate, we're not the newest organization. We've been around since the end of Reagan's administration, 1989. I think he showed us that things were going downhill, and it became pretty obvious by the end of his two terms that we were really only caring about the rich instead of the poor or anybody, just the rich. Okay, I don't want to go on too long about this. This is about food and water justice. It's a harvest celebration. We're grateful for the blessings that we have received, but we are concerned about the injustice that continues in the world. In particular, we're concerned about climate change. And I would substitute the word scared of climate change. We've seen some really horrific winds come through this part of my state, and you saw some huge winds in Florida just a few days ago. Was pretty bad. Well, I can't give a really good introduction to Bob Murphy, our first speaker. He's a minister. He has a degree in public health, which are a couple of professions that I find really interesting. Public health is one of them, because I think you can do a lot of good. And the other one is a anthropology, evolutionary anthropology. That's about Jungle Jay, of course. That's one of his hats that he wears. A few years ago, a book went around our fellowship called The Human Animal, and it really interested me and that subject. Well, let's hear from Bob and see what he has to say. Reverend Robert Murphy.
Well, thank you, Terry, and thank you, audience. It's good to see so many familiar faces and also some new faces, and you're all welcome in this good place. As Terry said, I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister in Florida. I've been doing environmental justice work for about 30 years, maybe 35 years with Unitarian Universalists. I was the minister who helped to get the Green Sanctuary program started back in the 1990s, and I've done a few other things. Rosalba remembers I was on Cape Cod for a few years and did a lot of emergency services work and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I really want to talk about tonight's program. It's a very unusual program because a lot of it is focused on congregations and what congregations are doing for environmental justice in response to climate change. And so it's a kind of an unusual program. There's not a lot of theory and science and speculation. It's really a lot of down-to-earth things. What can congregations do that is helpful, and particularly with food and justice, food and water justice issues? So it will seem unusual at some points. You're going to hear about harvest celebrations, for example. Dara will talk about Sukkot and what her congregation does. I hope that Jim Scott is with us to talk about music in congregations. There's Jim Scott. There he is. And so it's going to be a little bit different from maybe some of the climate justice presentations that you might have seen. And I do want to keep coming back to this theme about economic justice. The UUJEC, the name explains it, the Unitarian Universalist for Just Economic Community. We work a lot on mutual aid organizing, and we'll actually have a webinar on October 27th, which will talk about congregations and mutual aid and what that's all about. And I know some of you are already involved in mutual aid. We've done a lot with labor unions, which is very unusual for Unitarian Universalists, but we had a program for Labor Day, and we support Starbucks workers and the Immokalee workers and others, and we'll talk more about that. But so much of tonight's program is really about what can congregations do that's useful in response to emergencies and all kinds of problems. And our first speaker, and Terry will introduce, is going to be Dara, I believe. Thank you. Mr. Moderator.
Yeah, Dara is here. She'll discuss the celebration of Sukkot.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dara Moore, the co-president of Spirit of Life UU Church in Odessa, Florida. We celebrate holidays and faiths from around the world, including the main Jewish holidays. One of those is Sukkot, and I'd like to share a bit about its history and current perspectives as it relates to harvest time and welcoming people into our homes. Sukkot is a festival for giving thanks for many things, like food and shelter, which is apropos as we consider the need for food and water justice during current times of climate change. While I'm sharing my thoughts, I'll also be showing some images of the sukkah construction at SLUU and a few other interesting tidbits. Hope you enjoy. Sukkot is a Jewish holiday about gathering the harvest, but it also commemorates the sheltering of the Israelites in the wilderness after they left Egypt. It's celebrated by building and spending time in a sukkah, which represents the shelter for the Israelites, and decorating of the sukkah with foliage and fruit to represent the harvest. There are some requirements for building a sukkah and celebrating Sukkot, but as UUs, we tend to be a little casual about that. A sukkah is made by constructing an outdoor structure with at least 3 sides. People build them out of all sorts of materials. Currently, we use wood. Typically, laid across the top of the sukkah are either bamboo mats or palm fronds. 3 sides of it are usually covered with fabric to create walls. This year, we used strips of tulle which blew very nicely in the wind. Inside the sukkah, it is usually decorated with foliage garland and fresh fruit hanging from the top. Instead of using fresh fruit inside, as it will attract wild animals, we use paper fruit drawings made by kids. It's also important that the sky and stars can be seen through the roof of the sukkah to allow glimpses of the heavens, an expanded field of vision, and to connect us to nature. This is our final sukkah. And here are some examples of other people's sukkahs built more traditionally. People in apartments even construct them right on their balconies. As part of the Sukkot celebration, Jews walk around the inside of the sukkah carrying an etrog, which looks like a giant misshapen lemon, and lulav, which is composed of a cluster of date palm, willow, and myrtle fronds. These are waved in 6 directions: up, down, north, east, west, and south, to remember that the divine is everywhere. Now that I've covered the basics of preparing for and celebrating Sukkot, I've got a fun video for you to watch while I share more about the meaning of Sukkot. During the week of Sukkot, Jews traditionally take their meals inside the sukkah, but often also dwell inside the sukkah for many other activities of life, including talking, singing, napping, reading, relaxing, and entertaining. Dwelling in a sukkah invites people to remove themselves from both the materialistic things that normally fill our environment and the illusion of security that our stuff provides to us. While this sounds like a bit of a somber reality check, it's actually an unreservedly joyful celebration. Coming quickly after Yom Kippur's focus on repentance, Sukkot typically has a lively and happy spirit and is called the season of our rejoicing. I recall having a ton of fun decorating and hanging out in the sukkah as a young child. While Sukkot is a harvest festival, it is also a time when people are invited to step out of their comfort zones and make sure that life priorities are aligned to what is truly valuable. Contemporary symbolism of the holiday includes the celebration of human development of agriculture and associated egalitarianism, and is an expression of our growing concern for the earth. It urges us to consider with gratitude the bounty that the earth has provided us and how we need to protect it in return, as well as how such bounty should belong to all people on the planet. Sukkot also symbolizes our commitment to the homeless, the victims of political oppression, and refugees seeking shelter. During this time, we are encouraged to contemplate what we can do to end homelessness and to protect those seeking refuge from violence. The sukkah is a sign to open one's hearts at this season. Just as its roof opens to the sky, so too may those celebrating Sukkot be open to the stranger, the other, and the guest who they do not see every day. All are welcome into the sukkah. Only when welcoming the outsider into our lives can we return to the everyday of permanent structures, concrete, brick and walls, with a new love and respect for all humanity. Additionally, Sukkot is a holiday of change. It is a celebration of the beauty of things that don't last, just as that little hut is vulnerable and will be dismantled at the end of the week. Sukkot comes to tell us that the world is full of good and beautiful things, but that they will not last. So we should enjoy and celebrate them now. This season highlights the contrast between how we normally spend our days and what we really value, between how we live and how we love. It encourages us to assess priorities and honor change. And it invites us to give thanks for reawakening our awareness of these things and to celebrate the realignment of our actions with our values. By changing our values from individualistic and egoistic to connective and altruistic, we will be able to create a safe, harmonious, and happy world. To wrap up my remarks, I'd like to share with you a really nice video I found by Mayim Bialik called Building My Sukkah.
Build it. For thousands of years, we have done this. Thousands. Make a structure, we are told. Not a permanent one, for we are wanderers. Make a temporary structure. Build it up, piece by piece. It needs to be strong, but not too strong, because we are not invincible, and neither should this be. It needs to be private, but not too private, because we are not separate from our fellow creatures as much as we think we ought to be. It needs to be safe, but not too safe, because we're not safe from everything we wish to be safe from. Leave it open for guests to feel welcome. If you build it, they will come. Cover the sky, but not too much. You should be able to see the stars. We are told that we will be as numerous as the stars in the sky, and we should look at them from our temporary, not entirely strong, not completely private, and not totally safe temporary structure. Make it pretty. This will be your home for 8 days. Decorate it, light it up. Take willow, myrtle, date palm, and an etrog, a citron fruit, and assemble them just so. And hold on to them in this structure. North, south, east, and west. You cannot escape everything. You cannot run. It is everywhere. Everything is everywhere. Build a home when you are homeless. Make a fort when you feel indefensible. Find comfort when you are suffering. Do the impossible. Build this structure. Build it and watch what grows.
That's everything. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Thank you, Dara. That was really informative. I'm amazed, something I'd really never heard of before. Rebecca Allen's our next presenter. She's going to discuss veganism and climate change, and she's from the Austin area, Austin, Texas. And you'll have to unmute, Rebecca.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Reverend Gary Kowalski tells the story of a pig who chose very carefully her nest, a protected corner where the farmhouse and the porch meet. When it was getting close to time for her to have her piglets, she went to a flower bed and picked off daffodils and brought them over to her nest. She went back for more, and again she took them to the nest, and again. She continued this until she had made a semicircle of flowers around her nest. In the US, 97% of our pigs are from factory farms. Over 100 million pigs are killed annually unnecessarily. Unitarian Universalists have principles of which we are generally familiar. Less known are the 6 sources of UU values. Here are 2 of those. UU congregations affirm and promote, number 1, the direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed by all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Uphold life. Number 2, words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Justice, compassion, and love help us stand up against the structures of evil perpetrated on our human and non-human relatives. Veganism stands against the exploitation of life. Jonathan Balcom, an ethnologist, studies the minds of animals and shares that animals feel pain, they have friends, they have emotions, they have fun. We love to hear the stories about dolphins who save someone, or a person who rescues the animals in dire straits. Maybe it's a part of who we are. Being part of saving of life feels just. It may even be spiritual. 2 little piglets were recently rescued from a factory farm in Utah in 2017. They would have been sold for $42.50, but they were about to die. Their conditions were horrible. 2 men, Wayne and Paul, were arrested and tried for the alleged theft of these little piglets. But the 2 men were found innocent on all charges, unanimously by a very conservative jury just this past weekend. It's a monumental case, and I feel like it's another sign that the arc is leaning toward justice. Rescuing life rings true of justice. Not killing animals for food unnecessarily upholds life. UUAM showed a wonderful documentary called The Dark Hobby about indigenous people of Hawaii and the aquarium industry. People are destroying the ecosystems in Hawaii, as well as other places around the world, for pleasure. Not only for food, but for colorful fish they can keep in a container, either in a necklace or in a bowl on their shelf. This film is breathtakingly beautiful. I learned from the film that Cuba made it a law that no one can kill sharks. The consequences of them not killing those sharks meant the coral reefs came back. The diversity of fish came back. And now it's one of the most biodiverse fish areas in the Caribbean and maybe around the world. Can you imagine what would happen if we no longer exploited sharks and other animals? Would not wildlife populations have a chance to recover? 90% of deforestation could end. Not killing upholds life. The World Wildlife Fund collects data on the populations of wildlife. Their data show there has been a loss of 70% of our wildlife vertebrates just since 1970. Every few years, another 3% is gone, another 3% is gone. And at this rate, unless we go vegan, we are projected to have no wildlife vertebrates left by 2026. That's 4 years. What is the cause of this wildlife loss, we ask? Well, it's habitat destruction, deforestation for animal agriculture, which kills wildlife to protect the domesticated animals we breed and breed and breed, and hunting and fishing. A Florida man wiped out a pine forest so he could have grass-fed beef. In Texas, we wipe out forests for local beef. I ask you, if you believe in the interconnectedness of all beings, what will happen when our wildlife relatives are gone? Now, wildlife are innocent, and our companion animals are innocent, and children are innocent. And since childhood, we have been taught to ignore our feelings toward animals by our cultural norms for safety and for business. I was fed baby food of animals. I was told fish don't feel pain and that we have to kill animals for food. But that's no longer true. We can act. As the 7th principle says, we are interconnected. Animals are here with us, not for us. You may also believe in these: love thy neighbor. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Thou shalt not kill. Live and let live. First, do no harm. No scripture says these are limited to just humans. How long have we said these and still left out groups of people and of animals? Leaving out others for our own benefit. Yes, we were once a prey species. We had to watch out for predators. We told stories to our children so that they could be safe from animals. However, our myths and traditions and cultural beliefs may need revision. For example, we were taught that you have to eat meat for protein, milk for calcium. These are marketing strategies. We do not have to have a turkey for Thanksgiving. Even the name of the holiday is changing. Some now say Thanksgiving, Friendsgiving, or Harvest. Vegan meals are welcoming to all religious backgrounds: Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Sikhs, Jains, and on. About 7 years ago, my mother gave each of us siblings and in-laws a recipe that we would be making for Thanksgiving. She had all the ingredients ready for us to make Indian food, and it was a blast. It was vegetarian, and then the next year it was vegan. My mother became vegan at about the age of 84 years old. We witnessed the transition of a tradition. Both my UU church and my sister's UU church recently served universal meals at their annual event and their celebratory event. Universal meals are from the PCRM, and they include vegans and all religions, and they avoid the top 9 allergens most common in the US. That's inclusive. And change can be immediate. When I heard about mad cow disease and the killing of millions and millions of chickens due to bird flu, I thought, this is crazy. I stopped eating cows and chickens right then. It took another UU person named Jennifer to call me out on the other animal suffering that I was participating in and didn't know. It takes empathy, compassion, and love to fight for justice. UUAM has had incredible speakers on love and compassion, from Jane Goodall, when she gave a beautiful talk at A Blessing for the Animals. She is plant-based. Last year, we heard from Hereditary Chief Phil Lane Jr., a member of the Amtukwan, Dakota, and Chickasaw nations. He is an internationally recognized leader in touch with tribes around the world. They wrote a proclamation called Protect the Earth. And in one section, they said no to animal exploitation. Brother Phil is vegan. He says it fits in with all the tribes he knows and their belief in honoring all life. The stories I shared illustrate 3 UU values: justice, compassion, and love. Empathy and compassion lead to action, action for justice We are inspired by justice. We act for justice out of love. Some of you might even break into a car one day to save a dog or a puppy or a chicken or a piglet. Or maybe you will be one who rescues an animal at a factory farm. Or maybe you will be one who chooses to go vegan and reduce the killing. Ojibwa artist Linda G. Fisher said she thinks if the great chiefs were alive today, they would be horrified by what we do to animals. If they didn't have to kill animals for food, they would not, she said in the movie A Prayer for Compassion. How many of you have rescued an animal or adopted a rescue animal? Thank you. There is love in that action. Albert Schweitzer was very clear when he said, quote, "We must fight against the spirit of unconscious cruelty with which we treat animals. Animals suffer as much as we do. True humanity does not allow us to impose such sufferings on them. It is our duty to make the whole world recognize it. Until we extend our circle of compassion to all living things, humanity will not find peace." End quote. The gift of life is not just for one species of the 8 million species. As Unitarian Universalists John Bruins and Frank Church wrote in A Chosen Faith, existence requires an everlasting yea. I love that. And I say uplift life with an everlasting yea and choose veganism. Blessings to you all and your life.
Thank you, Rebecca. We've raised a couple of pigs over the years living in Iowa, and they're really sweet little animals if they're neutered. The unneutered ones are not quite so sweet. We're going to have question and answer at the end. We have 2 more people. Jay Hardman, and he goes by another moniker that Bob seemed to give him, and that's Jungle Jim. And he's an expert in community gardening, and this is really important to a lot of congregations as a way to outreach into the community. You ready to go, Jim? Jay? Are you muted? There he is. He's muted. Yeah. Can you unmute? There you go.
There we go. Yeah, it is Jungle J, and it was started as an email address in my archaeology career for my, to keep my field experiences separate from my office experiences. So that's how and the alliterative part stuck with young people. And I recognized immediately that that's a brand. And so I've been engaged in what I call shame-free self-promotion, because my message is what I feel is a valuable one. And apparently Reverend Bob thinks it is too, because he wanted me to come and speak with all of you. I am a retired archaeologist, but my background is in evolutionary biology first. And before that, I got a degree in secondary science education. All of those now combine as a retired guy into a responsibility to use all of those qualities to bring this message. And so 12 years ago, after I had retired from what was supposed to be a preservation ethic, and was when I started into the business as the first business of archaeology that ever happened in the United States, happened in St. Petersburg. And so I went to work there, and over my 35-year career, I watched the preservation ethic descend into the monetary ethic, until by the end of my career, it was, how much don't you want us to find? We'll help shepherd you through the labyrinth of cultural resource management and get your housing development, your whatever built. So at any rate, so I retired from that and came home to my native Pinellas County. And Pinellas County is pretty well dug up, and there's not a lot of archaeology going on here anymore. So I got involved with teen crisis and runaway shelter in my neighborhood. That led to being pulled upstairs. I started a diversity team and a green team there to sort of stop the poisoning and to let the Jewish kids and the Muslim kids not eat hot dogs for dinner and those kind of things. And that led me to the Unitarian Universalist Church right down the street from my home, where I understood that there was a practicing Hindu minister, and he was the interfaith coordinator for our entire area and was bringing together the imams and all of the different priests and rabbis and everybody in an interfaith thing. So I made an appointment with him, and I went and said, hey, I need to get a Muslim after 9/11 to come and talk to and they won't come out of the woodwork. And he got me a Filipino. And that was an eye-opener to me, because I thought Muslim meant Arab. So at any rate, I came to him with an idea that I had been developing while we sifted through the sands of time with the graduate students that were coming to me in the field to get their valuable field experience. And what they were getting was the real 411 on taking your vow of poverty if you want to be an archaeologist, and that it really is preservation oriented and in reciprocity. They were bringing me the latest currents coming out of academia. And we talked about over the screens, how did we get from jungle hut, dangerous in nature, to temple edifice, dangerous in the city? They're cutting out hearts and throwing bodies down the temple, to roaring crowds that are all down with that, because they don't want to be the guy on the altar. They want to be the guy in the jaguar hat. With that information, I formulated this idea that there must have been a time when it wasn't hardscrabble dangerous with the jaguar and not dangerous with man's inhumanity to man. There had to be, in that trajectory, there had to be a sweet spot. And I went and looked for it, and it was long. It took 12,000 years to go from that temple hut to the temple edifice. And what people don't know because of revisionist history is they didn't collapse because of the conquistadors. They had collapsed long before the conquistadors arrived. And the enemy of my enemy is my friend when he arrives with blunderbusses and war dogs and horses. And so that allowed for the insinuation of the conquistadors that they were already tearing down their temple edifice to build battlements against one another for dwindling resources, because the pyramid in the city was inverted in the culture, and the whole thing was riding on the food that was coming out of the jungle in perennial agroforestry that had evolved over thousands of years from a simple, very simple cultural evolution that mimics biological evolution. And so that brings us into systems theory, and why Abhi Janamanshi, the practicing Hindu, who was also a quantum physicist and came to this country as a UU minister, and then stayed a UU minister at our congregation for 14 years. Same thing in his estimation. At any rate, he saw my vision for recreating that sweet spot in microcosm, because I knew that I couldn't come back to civilization and put on my tinfoil hat on my pith helmet and say, hey, I'm an archaeologist and I know stuff. I had to recreate the proof of concept and then shout it. And so for 12 years, we've been recreating what was going on in that sweet spot in the jungle at the Unitarian Universalist of Clearwater. And to be honest with you, it's been the best kept secret within our walls, because I get patted on the head in the social hall and to meet new people when they say, oh, have you met Jay? He's our gardener. So that's one of the challenges, is you're never a prophet in your own hometown. However, I've also built an international following of over 2,500 people from around the world on a Facebook page, growing all the time. At one point, we had 40 gardeners in our community gardener. in our community gardens, which are on the periphery of this perennial agroforestry that mimics that sweet spot that was in those jungles, that was feeding all those temple cities. And by the end of my career, with the advent of total deforestation of the rainforest and satellite imagery, we could see that these ditches and berms that started out as just piles of household refuse on the temple, on the jungle hut, evolved to the creek bank and then into canals and ditches that were math, until the whole entire lowlands was covered in it, all terraformed by humans over thousands of years by ignorant savages that had so much more going on in their cities, even in collapse, than anything that the Europeans had going on, that they were amazed when they hit Mexico City or any of the temple cities. So anyway, so we take that information, bring it back to the Unitarian Church, and he says, we have 5 acres here. When can you start? And I said, I want the acre in the back that's now a lake. It was supposed to be a dry retention. Oak tree grew in front of the outfall, and now it's a lake. We removed the tree, drained the lake, and now we have one of those ditches that was in the jungle. I planted every kind of fruit tree around there. And by the way, egalitarian, 100%. There has never been a dime transacted in the 12 years that we've been there. Every fruit tree, and I'm talking hundreds of tropical fruit trees and the usual avocados and things that would be familiar to anybody in Florida. But we are growing literally probably 1,000 different varieties of perennial food crops that nobody knows about outside of the United States. They all come to us from Africa and Asia and the islands and the Yucatan via this outreach. And you can join Beacon Food Forest Gardens on Facebook. Beacon Food Forest Gardens. Why Beacon? Because our vision at our Unitarian Church is to be a beacon of reason, meaning, and bold social action. So in order to integrate it to our congregation, I called it Beacon. We're still working on that. But at any rate, we have a new developmental minister that's just come in. And that's, as you saw in my blurb, Reason for Hope. With her arrival, I believe that we are going to take this to the next level. Reverend Amy Kindred comes to us from now 2 Florida congregations and candidated to come to us. And I'm over the moon because she started out her first love coming out of high school and going into college. She decided on horticulture. She got a master's in art history and was involved with children in teaching art, and also judged all of the Volusia County school children's artwork for her county over in Brevard County, the Brevard County school system. And now she's come to us, and we've already started having events that I used to run in the past, but COVID has caused a hiatus for us. I'm not going to capitalize. I know we have another speaker that needs to come on, so I'll just answer any other questions in the after the program. But I will share with you that we have already done our first post-COVID event, and because of the hurricane, we instantly turned it into a hurricane relief and did a direct action and sent all the funds that we raised down to Arcadia, Florida, which is in the poorest county in Florida, landlocked by a rising Peace River and unable to be reached by FEMA and so forth from the coast. So, these are the kinds of things. Local is what I would stress. These things need to be done locally and then meet at the margins. And that's why I think UUs are in the prime spot to do this. So I thank you and look forward to any questions anybody has at the end of the program.
Thanks, Jay. Whoops. Yeah, thanks, Jay. Our next speaker is Jim Scott. Jim Scott is as famous as a songwriter and as a singer who has been involved with environmental justice projects for over 30 years. He helped create the Green Sanctuary program during the 1990s. And I hope you're not muted.
He's going to get
Okay.
unmuted right now. There we go.
Good.
And he's just, he left us here a little bit too long. There, that's better. I have perfect pitch. It's right there. See that little A? What did we do without that for 50 years? Somos el barco, somos el mar, navego en ti, navega sin mí. What did he say? We are the boat, we are the sea, I sail in you, you sail in me. Well, that's a chorus from a beautiful song by my friend Laurie Wyatt. It'll be in our next hymn book, I promise. It's in my book, the Earth and Spirit Songbook. I just want to say a few words in between some music. Oh, maybe I need these. I'm in denial about the glasses. Everything got darker and smaller. What happened? I started as a Universalist 70 years ago, and with my family, they didn't give me a choice. And then since 1973, I found an old calendar. Until COVID, I played at least one UU church, sometimes several, every week. 50 Sundays, 52 Sundays a year, a lot of years. Sometimes churches of other denominations, but really, I guess you all know that my songs are in the hymn books, and he's still alive. I want to just really shout out, thank you so much, Bob Murphy, for inviting me. Bob and others created the initial dream of Green Sanctuary and a book, even back in, when was it, 1990 or something, before we had all the references of internet and things like that we could do. But it was the Peter Principle in action that around the turn of the century, 2000, 2001, 2, I was the co-chair of what had become the Seventh Principle Project that's now the UU Ministry for the Earth. And I had a hand in the Green Sanctuary. Thanks, Terry, for mentioning. I did more than I get credit for. In all honesty, the whole thing almost folded, and it was me and I and a couple of others that saved us from even losing our affiliation as a UU group. And I brought together everybody who could come, which was pretty much East Coast, to take on the challenge of, we got to create a program. The Green Sanctuary Handbook. And so lots of other people did a lot of stuff for that. I don't want to take too much credit for that, but I did write, since I'm a gardener too, I wrote the part about the outdoor sanctuary. I went to green building conferences and wrote the part about green building, and also the general green worship arts and music, which I hope is what people remember me for. And then I said, I got to get back to music. And I got a grant from the UU Fund for Unitarian Universalism. And I made this big songbook, the Earth and Spirit Songbook. That song by Laurie is in there. And I now have some backing to make a second book. And I'm working on getting some more grants to age gracefully writing another songbook for us. My attitude about UUs is less talk and more action, and more music is my bias, after all. So more music for action is where I want to be, and it's a great thing. It's a great trick, getting people to sing together, to celebrate in this way, resonate together, putting ourselves in harmony, crying out. It is the best motivation for getting something going, in my opinion. Here's a song. You can help. I won't hear you, but you can help. We are the earth, and we speak for creation. We cannot stand by and watch its devastation. Here's your part. And we will not be bought. Try that. And we will not be bought. We will not be deceived. Try that. We will not be deceived. We are one. We are strong. We are the earth. Sing it again. We are one. We are strong. We are the earth. That's the way it works. We are the earth, and we shall speak as one. We'll not surrender great glaciers to the sun. We will not be bought, and we will not be bought, not be deceived. We will not be deceived. We are one, we are strong, we are the earth. We are one, we are strong, we are the earth. We are the earth, diverse and yet united. We will keep on until the wrongs are righted. We will not be bought, and we will not be bought. We will not be deceived. We are one, we are strong, we are the earth. We are one, we are strong, we are the earth. So you can just add 2 lines that rhyme at the beginning, and then the rest of it is the same every time. Not quite a call and response, and not quite a zipper song, just changing one word, but I invite you to use it. You can find it on my YouTube page. And I found myself at Lafayette Park, right across from the White House several years ago, and in a protest. And so I just said, we are the earth at the home of the president. If you don't do something soon, we're gonna get another resident. That's the way it works. See, when we will not be bought, we will not be deceived. We are one, we are strong, we are the earth. We are one, we are strong, we are the earth. And then we end with, we are more than just dwellers on this earth. We are the earth. Well, since COVID hit, thank you for, since COVID hit March of 2020, I had 5 tours. I was even ahead. I'd bought tickets on Southwest and all of this kind of, and everything crashed. So I'm not a minister or a music director of a church, so I had no income, and I had to reinvent myself. I've done a concert every Wednesday at 8 p.m. for 2.5 years now. It's on YouTube and it's on Facebook. You can friend me on Facebook. They're both youtube.com/Jim Scott Music and facebook.com/Jim Scott Music. And my website is Jim Scott Music. So there's my commercial. But I want to build to a great big climax here with this. I heard a talk show today. They were discussing, and since I assume all my friends listen to NPR all the time, you probably heard it too. I heard that the poll says 30% of 18 to 40-year-olds are going to vote, are motivated to vote. 70% are not going to bother. They say they're not going to bother to vote. And wow, you wouldn't believe the rationalizations. And these were intelligent people. They're asking, well, intelligent, however, they can make a complete sentence. And they made this case for their apathy, for their disinterest. It was just shocking. These people who are, well-spoken, and they say, well, and they come out as, most of them, as way over liberal, progressive, but the things were things like, well, both parties are just big business, and you can't really tell them. All the men wear suits, the same suit, and and maybe that's why an entertainer comes in and is just completely obnoxious or something and gets eyes and all. And this, well, they're all, they're both big business, and both parties a former Navy officer. He said, both parties deploy us to the Middle East. And, you know, the things, so, and both parties are destroying the earth. And both parties are sending us to war, and have war as the answer to things. Wow. How do we reach these people to say, look, we're old enough to be pragmatic about this. We can't let, you know, perfection be the only goal. We're flawed human beings, and we're doing the best we can. I was waiting for the interviewer to try to argue, you know, well, don't you think Joe Biden did something? And, you know, but wow, okay, enough of that. 70% of young people are not motivated. What are we going to do in about 5 weeks? Here's my suggestion. It's a little self-serving, I know, but I wrote a song, and I'm making a video. I've even got my friend Peter Yarrow in this video, and some other great folks, and I tried to make it look diverse, like America. We're still putting the video together. I have the soundtrack. And we made a video of this that I'm sort of embarrassed at. It's actually on my YouTube channel, but that was a couple of years ago. But here's what we got now. A little bit of the song, and I just want to talk over it. We won't be victims, won't be afraid. We got to heal the broken world we made. Make a change, make a choice. The world needs your voice. Register your intention, rock the boat. You can't complain if you don't vote. Express yourself, get everybody else. The world needs your voice. Here's the chorus now. The world needs your voice. The world needs your voice. Cry in anguish, shout and rejoice. The world needs your voice. I'll go to the bridge, to the big words. The positive exclusion, obfuscation, and confusion. The heads of power, those in the shadows, will feel the rising tide, gonna know which way the wind blows. Raise the spirit, raise the ground swell. Raise consciousness, raise a little hell. Faith resounding, a joyful noise. The world needs your voice. Help me sing the song now. The world needs your voice. The world needs your voice. Cry in anguish, shout and rejoice. The world needs your voice. Whatever, there's more to it, but there's the Reader's Digest version. The thing we got to do is, I wasn't that active, I'll admit, when I was younger. But I have been for the last 10 or 15 years. I go out and canvass for candidates. I do things like that. I never, you know, and I make phone calls. I do those things like that. I'll bet many of you are doing that too. But if you want to help make this song go viral, I'd really appreciate that. I don't know how to make something go viral, but I'm going to try to promote it everywhere I can. And I think what we really got to do now to save the earth, not to mention save democracy, by November 8th, it's all coming down. If those other people, and we have some remarkably stupid people in Congress, so we got to get rid of all that we can. And we've got a few weeks to do that. And that should take precedence, in my opinion, over anything else. So thank you. I think that's what UU's activity should be, in my opinion. Thank you for listening. It's very therapeutic to talk a lot and get people to pay attention.
Thank you, Jim. This has been terrific. And we have to thank Reverend Bob Murphy for this, because he's the one who found everybody to speak and sing. And it's been a great evening.
So I just wanted to say that the agenda for tonight's program was planned before Hurricane Fiona, even, and before Hurricane Ian. And but I did want to say something about emergency services congregations in both of those hurricanes, and also Julia in Central America. I sent you a note to all of you about the need for donations to UU Disaster Relief Fund. And this is the national UUA organization that responds to disasters, and especially Hurricane Ian. And that's one of the chat notes. And please be generous in your response. And if you need assistance, if you're in a congregation that's been hit by the storm, or you have an affiliate group, you may want to think about asking for mutual aid support through the disaster relief. For Fiona in Puerto Rico, it's really the Shelter Rock congregation on Long Island, New York, that is providing a lot of the support. And I put their address in also. And there's a special need to keep Puerto Rico in mind, where they haven't even recovered from Hurricane Maria, and they're dealing with another storm. So I realize the agenda was set before these storms hit. I want to call your attention to the current emergency. I know that at least half of the people on tonight's webinar are in Florida. I do some ministry with Port Charlotte. I know there's some needs down there, very close to Fort Myers. And we'll just try to be helpful as best we can. Thank you.
The disaster funds are on our front page of the UUJEC.org if you want to find out where they are. Bob, do you want to give the closing words? You probably have something inspirational on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah. Well, it was said long ago, think globally, act locally. I don't know how to improve on that. That was true back at the time of the 1970 Earth Day, and all these years later, it's still very much true. It has also been said, if you want environmental peace, work for environmental justice. And I think that that includes an awareness of all species and a concern for all peoples and all places. The willingness to celebrate both our interdependence and our individuality. The understanding that all of our Unitarian Universalist principles are really one package. They're not just a bunch of scattered thoughts, but they all fit together in one holistic vision. Every one of those principles matters, and every one of them contributes to the whole. I agree very much with our animal ministry friends that we need to expand that first principle to respect the inherent worth and dignity of all beings. And that's very important as we talk about our principles. And I suppose there's more that can be said. But whatever your faith tradition, whatever your spiritual path, I hope you enjoy this harvest celebration, this harvest season. Take the message back to your congregations and talk about things like food justice, water justice, mutual aid. That's our next big subject for a webinar, October 27th. But just be kind to each other. And as Rebecca Allen would say, when you think about your neighbors, think about all of your neighbors, the ones on 4 feet and wings and swim in the ocean. You know, just be good to each other. Namaste.
Thank you, Bob. Good night.